Hello, I'm Peter here from Insight Training. Welcome to today's short session, one of the series that we're currently running, looking at financial reporting, auditing and company law issues, particularly pertinent in the current climate. Today's session is remote auditing, a file reviewer's perspective. Here's the running order. We'll begin with a very quick overview and then look at four themes: going concern, logistics, stock takes, and audit reports. Let's begin with our overview. So I've done quite a few audit file reviews recently of files that have been completed during lockdown. And what I'm going to try and do in today's short session is highlight from my point of view what I think is really important to do when you're auditing in that environment and what's very important to make sure you get on the file. The ICAEW Audit and Assurance faculty have issued a really useful paper called Remote Auditing in Practice that covers a number of today's themes in more detail, and faculty members can access that guide by clicking on the link on this slide. Okay, let's start off with theme one. Obviously, going concern is a really sticky issue for some organisations currently, given where we are with COVID. What we've mentioned on previous sessions in this series, it's very unlikely that an entity will conclude it's not a going concern. Thus is going concern defined in FRS 102. What I think therefore you've more importantly got to look for from an audit point of view is there a material uncertainty casting significant doubt on going concern? If there is, that's got ramifications for the accounts, and of course also it's got ramifications for the audit report. Now here are the four audit report outcomes in relation to going concern. The one to look at in this context is the one in red. So where you're happy that the basis of preparation is right, that any material uncertainty casting significant doubt on going concern is adequately disclosed. But of course, what you would need to do in your audit report's going concern section is you would need to highlight that material uncertainty and cross-reference to the relevant note to the accounts. Now this I think is a challenging area, if only because material uncertainty casting significant doubt is not particularly well defined at all within FRS. You will of course also get massive pushback from clients because they will feel that to incorporate that paragraph will send out all the wrong messages to external stakeholders and notably banks. But that's what the auditing standard requires, and I think if you start your audit with that in mind and work back, that's where you need to be in the COVID environment. Now, there's been lots written about going concern approach in the current climate by professional bodies. I would say that we're looking for probably 5 key things here, and let's run through these in turn. I think in pretty much every case currently, we are looking for audit clients to produce projections to inform that going concern conclusion, and really importantly to ensure those projections do indeed look forward 12 months from the date of signing of the accounts. I'm mindful that certainly in smaller firms auditing smaller entities, having projections to inform a going concern conclusion is a real luxury, but I think they will be required, and it'll be very important that clients own them. Now, I do appreciate in some firms there'll be a lot of hand-holding to do here. You'll have to perhaps get involved in helping clients originate those projections. That I think is fine, but very important to make sure that ultimately the clients do own the projections that you help them originate, and that's really clear on the audit file. What I think we're looking for as well here is, can you find someone in your firm not involved in the audit to help the clients with the origination of the projections? You will then independently review those, and it'll be really clear on file not only that the clients own the projections, but you've appropriately validated and challenged the related underpinning key assumptions. That validation and challenge may well be taking place day to day, but it's not always very clear from audit files that it has indeed occurred. And we're also seeing a lot of situations currently where going concern is sticky, of situations where firms have undertaken a second partner review, if only focusing solely on the going concern work, just to give that extra level of reassurance that the conclusion's right and the documentation's right in that area also. Okay, theme 2, logistics. Now, there's been lots of guidance issued about remote auditing. I mentioned a bit earlier on the ICAEW Audit and Assurance Faculty Guide. There's also been a very useful guide produced by the Financial Reporting Council dealing with remote auditing. And what I think these guides tend to advocate is that firms are as creative as possible in gathering evidence in a different way to get over the line to be able to sign off. So screen sharing, information being emailed, virtual stock takes. And when you can use these techniques to get you to a place whereby you gather the evidence that you need, I do appreciate it will be a blessed relief. My concern though sometimes is because you've not been able to get into the client organization to get the evidence in the way that you ordinarily would, that does increase the risk, not only of error, but of fraud as well. Is there a possibility that you've been hoodwinked because you've not been able to get into the client organization to access the information in the way that you ordinarily would? And what I'm looking for on files currently is a working paper, typically on the planning section, explaining how you've tackled the audit differently because of COVID and because you had to audit remotely. What additional risks has that remote approach given rise to, and how specifically have you tackled them? And that sort of wording at the bottom of the slide there reflects what I'm putting on lots of file reviews currently. Yes, great to get to a place whereby you can gather the evidence that you need, but how have you done it differently? What risks has that created? And how have you tackled those? That's what I think is really key to articulate in relation to the file as you produce it in this current climate. Okay, theme 3 is stock counts. Now, I think counting stock in a lockdown scenario, 31st of March 20, say, fixed asset verification in a lockdown situation, this is somewhat challenging. And we're getting tons of questions currently on how that would work and what the workarounds might be to get to a place whereby you can indeed sign off, even though maybe you weren't physically able to access the client's premises to count the stock at the date that was originally planned. Now, you can indeed attend live stream stock counts, but remember, you've got to be comfortable that that will work for the client and that it will work for you. Okay, remember that the stock count is a client control. Can you probably observe the control being implemented if you're not physically there? And going back to my earlier point, is there a possibility that you might in some way, shape or form be hoodwinked, might be duped because you can't be physically there in a way that you ordinarily would? So you talked to me about the importance of test counts as part of the stock take attendance. So floor to sheet, sheet to floor. Is there a risk possibly if you're going from, let's say, sheet to floor, that you're asking clients to actually show you stock and count it so you can actually see that the amount on the stock sheet indeed reflects what's actually there? And then moving stock to a different part of the warehouse, different part of the premises, and then counting it again, albeit using per your stock sheets, actually it's different stock in a different location. These are the sort of risks I think you've got to be mindful of. And if you can't get comfort that that live stream stock count gives you the reassurance that you need, what you've then got to think about is, can we do stock count a different way? Being appropriately skeptical, I suppose, about the way you tackle it to ensure you can indeed sign off. And one way might be to do a count at a later date and roll back. That's great, but do remember that if you're doing a count at a later date and rolling back, you've got to make sure that you're testing transactions in the gap period, not only for overstatement, but for understatement as well. And that again is quite a recurring theme on files at the current time. How have you got comfort in testing that reconciliation of stock from year end to count date, that they have completely captured all the movements in the gap period, as well as the ones that they have indeed captured on genuine, authentic transactions that you can validate? There is scope to rely on continuous stock checking. What we always talk about from the point of view of continuous stock checking, the three important things there I feel are: number one, where continuous stock checking takes place as a client control, is all stock counted at least once during the period? Are you able to have sight of the book to physical reconciliations to see that they're appropriately followed up on? And are you able to attend on one or two occasions during the course of the year? If that's all possible, wonderful, but the ability to rely on continuous stock checking and the criteria for doing so don't change just because of the pandemic. I'm much more nervous about question 4. What we're kind of looking at here from some delegates currently is, can we almost make stock the balancing figure? So we're happy with our sales figure, we're happy with our opening stock, our purchases, we're happy with the margin, and therefore by definition, the closing stock is the balancing figure. I'm very nervous about that approach, I have to say. Surely in the current climate with the economy in complete turmoil, margins are anything but stable for many organizations. So I'm less inclined to go down the route of that final option there. But the other options all have some merit, but I talked about some of the ifs and buts there, and some of the documentation requirements to make sure that related risks are appropriately tackled, and that's clear from the file. Right, theme 4 is audit reports. I've already mentioned this from the point of view of going concern. We talked about the normal audit report and the material uncertainty regarding going concern reference in the unmodified report. I guess the other two to be aware of as well, emphasis of matter, probably not as common. We're getting situations currently where guidance coming out of professional bodies is saying that if, for example, an organization that you're auditing has perhaps got a lot of investment property, and that particular property is dependent on a RICS valuation at the year end, and maybe the RICS valuation's got a material uncertainty paragraph in it, that gives you a little bit more cause for concern. That might give you cause to incorporate an emphasis matter paragraph to flag in the notes to the accounts the fact that the RICS valuers are being a little bit less confident than normal about the valuation that they're giving. My worry with the emphasis matter is that audit firms will include it when they should include a material uncertainty regarding going concern paragraph. Very important to ensure that where you have got that material uncertainty, you're embracing it and not hiding behind an emphasis matter. And I genuinely feel there will be some situations where audit firms genuinely can't get the evidence that they need and will have to modify their opinion, limitation of scope. We get lots of delegate questions currently saying, if it's not the client's fault, if it's COVID's fault, that we, the audit firm, can't get the evidence that we need, would we still need a limitation of scope modification? I think absolutely you would. So be mindful of that. We would expect that to some degree in the current climate based on the difficulty in gathering the evidence that you need. And that just finally summarizes from the ICAEW paper I mentioned at the start of this short session, the real challenge we all face. There's pressure on audit firms not to make things worse, but you've got to be mindful of the risk and tackle that in terms of the way you tackle the approach to the audit and make that really clear on the audit file as well. Okay, hope that was useful. Let me give you a few final takeaways from today's short session. So I think tell the story with going concern as best you can. We talked about that in the early part of this short session. Be innovative, but be aware that auditing in a way that you don't ordinarily do does create particular risks, and being really clear what those risks are and how you mitigated them is what we're really looking for on files currently, but aren't always seeing. And yes, there will be definitely some audit report wording changes in the current climate. We've highlighted those in the latter part there of today's short session. Hope that was useful. Do keep an eye on our website for information about our longer courses, and do drop us a note at inquiries@insightlifetraining.biz if you've got any comments on today's session or any requests for future training and seminars, or doable through the inquiries@ email address that you've got here on this slide. Thanks for listening. I'll speak to you all soon.